Anatoly Moskvin experienced a traumatic event as a child that changed his psychological state forever. The incident was the first in a string of dreadful experiences. His arms, legs, and torso were all bruised. Anatoly had been raped violently on his way to school by an older man. Anatoly was 12 years old when he went on a school recycling collection trip to a nearby village. He then found himself in the company of a cult of men. The men forced him to attend the funeral of an 11-year-old girl who died as a result of an accidental electrocution while taking a bath. The mother of the deceased girl then insisted on Anatoly kissing her dead daughter. The mother then pushed a tearful Anatoly down to their dead daughter's head and held him there until he kissed her 3 times on the forehead. The mother of the deceased girl then presented Anatoly with an apple. She then took 2 brass rings from her pocket, one for Anatoly and the other for her late daughter's finger. She looked at Anatoly and announced that they were now married. The mother then gave Anatoly more money and fruit. That night, Anatoly had a nightmare about the dead girl. In his mind, he was genuinely married to the deceased girl. The nightmare kept recurring for several nights in a row. The dead girl told Anatoly in his nightmares that he should return to the exact spot where he kissed and married her and practice black magic. She'd teach him how to do it. Anatoly was haunted by the ghost of the girl until he gave in and returned to the village where he had married the dead girl. However, the dead girl continued to appear in his dreams. Anatoly attempted to open up to his parents. They scheduled an appointment with a clinical psychologist. They suspected that their son had a mental illness. Anatoly was given sleeping pills because he was too scared to sleep at the time. The dead girl, however, reappeared in Anatoly's dreams and informed him that the only way to get rid of her was through black magic rituals. Anatoly was determined to end the nightmare this time. All he had to do, according to the ghost, was go out and look for another young boy's tooth. Anatoly discovered a tooth and hid it under his pillow. That night, the nightmares stopped. From that point forward, Anatoly developed a strange obsession with death and black magic. He began going for daily nighttime walks in graveyards. Anatoly was also a regular visitor to the deceased girl's grave. Only in a cemetery did he feel truly at peace. When Anatoly started university, he joined a Luciferian group. Abstinence from sex, alcohol, and cigarettes were among the group rules. He would perform rituals and animal sacrifices with his followers. Anatoly now regretted having pushed the girl's ghost away when he was younger. When Anatoly told his fellow group members about his previous experience, they thought he was gifted and special. Respected Luciferians became interested in Anatoly and wanted to assist him with his gift. Anatoly earned his bachelor's degree in Celtic history and folklore. He went on to become a well-known lecturer. Despite his success, his obsession with death led him to take on a second job as an obituary journalist. This gave Anatoly more reasons to visit cemeteries. Anatoly met a woman he was romantically interested in 2003, when he was 37 years old. N.B. He had never had a girlfriend, wife, or sex in his entire life. Julia Granova was the woman's name. Theirs was a non-sexual relationship. However, the couple's relationship failed because Julia desired a child. And because the couple was not married, they were unable to adopt. Anatoly eventually landed his dream job, traveling around Russia analyzing, researching, and studying various cemeteries. The person who hired him wanted to write a book about Russian cemeteries. Anatoly found himself sleeping wherever he could, mostly on top of graves in cemeteries. Anatoly once discovered an empty coffin in the cemetery that was to be used the next day. So he simply slept in it. This job had such an impact on Anatoly that he became a recluse afterward. In the aftermath of a terrorist attack at Moscow's Domodedovo airport. Shortly after the attack, authorities received reports of Muslim graves being desecrated in Nizhny Novgorod, so they went to a cemetery where someone had painted over pictures of the dead Muslims, and it was here that cemetery expert Anatoly Moskvin was apprehended and questioned. The main reason was that Anatoly expressed horrifying views in his newspaper articles. Anatoly was a Nazi. Another reason was that the majority of the vandalized graves were in Anatoly's neighborhood. As a result, authorities went to Anatoly's house to arrest him and search for any additional evidence on him. Surprisingly, there was more in store for them. The cops discovered life-sized dolls all over Anatoly's apartment. Some of the dolls were in the garage, while others were on the sofa, on shelves, or standing or leaning against the walls. All of the dolls were dressed in bonnets, dresses, and socks. Some even wore makeup. Anatoly's apartment contained approximately 26 life-sized dolls. When one of the cops attempted to move one of the dolls, he heard a rattling sound inside. Authorities discovered human remains of a teenage girl after opening one of the dolls. She had been mummified, dressed up as a doll, and displayed. All of the dolls were seized by authorities and taken to a laboratory for further examination. Each of the dolls represented a different human body. The bodies were all females between the ages of 3 and 12. A large open wound in the chest of many of the bodies contained a music or voice box. The entire procedure is as follows. Anatoly dug up the girls' bodies, mummified them in a salt and baking soda mixture for 2 weeks, stuffed them with rags and the items they were buried with, bandaged them, and dressed them in tights to keep everything together. Anatoly accomplished all of this in the cemetery. The dead bodies were then given doll faces by Anatoly. The dolls were then adorned with makeup and women's clothing. Meanwhile, while there were a few reported cases of missing dead bodies, many families were unaware that their loved ones' bodies had been stolen. They would go to their loved ones' graves, unaware that they were empty. Anatoly carefully repressed the soil, making it impossible to tell that the grave had been tampered with. The fact that Anatoly was still living with his parents was the most unbelievable part of the story. He lived under the same roof as his parents with the human dolls. Neighbors claimed they could smell the stench coming from the house, but they ruled it out as sewage. Anatoly's parents, on the other hand, claimed that they had no idea the dolls were dead bodies. They assumed Anatoly was working on a doll project. There was even a doll standing at the foot of their bed. Anatoly admitted to all of his crimes. His motivation was to alleviate his loneliness. He adopted the girls' bodies as his own. And he planned to use black magic on them in the future to bring them back to life. He remembered the dolls' birthdays, talked to them, watched cartoons with them, wrote letters to them, and so on. Finally, Anatoly claimed that he obtained permission from the girls before taking them in. He would sleep on the girls' graves, and they would appear in his dreams, begging him to take them in. Anatoly confessed to a total of 44 bodies in 2013. Anatoly was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia following a mental evaluation. He entered an insanity plea and was committed to a psychiatric hospital. You left your girls out in the cold. And I brought them home to warm up. What are your thoughts on the Anatoly Moskvin's case? I really appreciate your input. Thank you for taking the time to watch. Be a part of the Crime Diaries family and hit the subscribe button now.